The Anglican Archbishop of Brisbane, Philip Aspinall, is under pressure after explosive evidence heard before the Royal Commission into Child Abuse today. Convicted paedophile Garth Hawkins told the Commission that in 1981, Aspinall cajoled a young boy into Hawkins' bed. Hawkins then abused the boy. Philip Aspinall is due to give evidence next week and strongly denies the allegations. The Commission is now examining the Boys Society, a church organisation that promised to unlock the world for young boys across Australia by taking them on camping and sporting adventures. Instead, the Anglican group included 5 pedophiles who used it as a way to meet and abuse boys, destroying their lives in the process. The abuse occurred across 4 states, from the 1960s to the 1990s, with Tasmania at the centre. Michael Atkin reports, and a warning that the story contains some graphic descriptions.
Steve Fisher has been waiting for this day for 15 years. It's his chance to speak about the torment he suffered at the hands of paedophile priest Garth Hawkins.
I'm actually quite looking forward to it, and you know, it'll be a relief to get this all over and done with.
Over the next week, 9 survivors will tell their stories of abuse and how they were allegedly used by the paedophile ring.
There is a probability that a paedophile ring has been operating in the Boys Society.
The men have all been charged and 4 have served time in prison. The Commission is looking at how they work together to get access and abuse children.
There's been no closure, there's been no real investigation by the church, and that's what needs to happen.
The pedophiles used the youth organisation, the Church of England Boys Society, to procure children.
Church of England Boys Society was very much like Scouts. They were a group of young people, and they were very much involved in camping and sports carnivals and so forth.
One of the members of the alleged ring was priest Garth Hawkins. In Devonport in northwest Tasmania, he met Steve Fisher, a 13-year-old boy without a father, taking him on speedboat and camping trips and plying him with booze. He would sexually abuse him for 4 years.
Hawkins wanted me to sleep in his bed. He pulled me onto his knee and rubbed his hand over my penis and testicles and said I was a real spunk and that he would never hurt me. I told him that it was an old faggot and that he was to leave me alone. I was frightened and scared, but I stayed the night.
Hawkins was moved by the church because of suspected abuse, but continued to abuse Steve Fisher. It was a relationship Hawkins bragged about.
When I first used Steve and he didn't have any pubic hair.
I did not know why I was so adamant that I wanted him to marry me. It wasn't until later that a psychologist said, you know, that was your way of showing him that you turned out normal.
It took years before the church and the police took the allegations seriously. Lou Daniels was a colleague of Hawkins and also liked to abuse children. In 1982, Daniels published a glowing history of the Church of England Boys Society.
One of the paragraphs that I most remember is, it was a great camp. Skinny dipping in the Loftus Creek in over century heat is probably the most vivid memory of most of the Tasmanian boys. And I think this book will come back to haunt Daniels.
Daniels was a priest at St Mark's in Deloraine, a small rural Tasmanian town during the 1980s when he started abusing teenage boy Brett Skipper.
He was 11 years old when the abuse started. I think it stopped when Brett was about 14. He put a stop to it. I didn't know about it until Brett was 25 years old.
Zena Skipper has been attending the Royal Commission on behalf of her son, who committed suicide in 2004. One of the men who abused Brett Skipper was another member of the alleged paedophile ring, Bob Brandenburg.
They had a camp in Deloraine and he got to know Brett, knew he didn't have a dad, and then he went back to Adelaide and he invited Brett to go and stay with him. So he went over, and that's when the abuse actually started.
The Anglican Church in Adelaide was warned about Brandenburg in 1978, years before he met Brett Skipper, but they did not act. Today, Daniels admitted Brett Skipper told him about Brandenburg's abuse.
And that's when he told me when he was much younger. He'd been twice, Brandenburg had flown into Adelaide, paid his airfares to Adelaide to have a holiday with him, and that he'd abused him then.
With the law closing in on Brandenburg in 1999, he killed himself. Brett Skipper reported his abuse to the Anglican Church, but nothing was referred to the police. He left his mother this briefcase of evidence when he took his life.
A lot of documents with evidence against Lou Daniels, and also some handwritten notes of how Brett was feeling. I'm just trying to understand, trying to forget, and trying to get along with life. It would be nice to have somebody to help me.
The Anglican Church kept allegations of abuse about Lou Daniels in-house. He was moved, promoted and sent to a priest for counselling.
You certainly weren't asked to resign.
No.
From the ministry. There was
Daniels was eventually jailed in 2005 for child sex offences. Now the role of the current Archbishop of Brisbane, Philip Aspinall, is under examination. In 2003, Philip Aspinall was instrumental in the downfall of then Governor-General Peter Hollingworth for failing to remove a pedophile priest.
Dr Hollingworth's decision to allow John Elliott to continue in ministry after Elliott had acknowledged abusing children, I agree with the board. I think that is a grave error of judgment.
Before moving to Queensland, Aspinall was a major figure in the Church of England Boys Society in Tasmania. Yesterday, the Royal Commission heard allegations by survivor BYF, which claimed Philip Aspinall encouraged him to go into a room with Garth Hawkins.
I wouldn't have been there without Archbishop Aspinall. He put me in that bed. He made that decision after I told him that I was concerned that Hawkins was the one who was going to abuse me.
Today, Garth Hawkins supported BYF's version of events.
He was cajoled or teased by Philip Aspinall and the other boys into joining me in my bed.
Other survivors have questioned how much Philip Aspinall knew about the sexual abuse within the Anglican Church. Philip Aspinall will testify in the coming days and strongly denies any knowledge.
We need somebody to take the right step and actually come out and tell the whole story, the real story. And that man should be Philip Aspinall.
Michael Atkin reporting.